the interest of time. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julia Matevosyan. I'm a chief engineer at Energy Systems Integration Group. ESIG also serves in a leadership role in the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, or G-PST, whose mission is to bring together key actors to catalyze rapid, clean energy transition at a precedented scale and speed. This is being done by providing a coordinated and holistic approach to necessary knowledge, education, and support to power system operators across 5 action pillars. The foundation of G-PST is a group of 6 system operators from around the globe who are facing higher penetration of wind and solar inverter-based resources sooner than any other operators in the world. The 5 pillars of the consortium are research and peer learning, technical support, task force development, workforce development, technology adoption, support, and open data and tools. ESIG is a lead on Pillar 1, which is research and peer learning, and more information on G-PST can be found on globalpst.org. As the lead of Pillar 1, ESIG would like to welcome you to this April monthly webinar of our joint G-PST Pillar 1 ESIG webinar series. This series is in addition to regular ESIG monthly webinar series and focuses on G-PST research agenda and associated topics that are being addressed in Pillar 1. Topics are presented by both founding system operators, which is the case today, and other advanced system operators active in Pillar 1, as well as members of industry and academia participating in activities of Research Agenda Group and Research Advisory Committee of Pillar 1. An additional series of webinars on the other 4 pillars of the G-PST is also being provided on a monthly basis through NREL. For those of you who would like to learn more about G-PST and how to engage, please go to globalpst.org and click on Get Involved tab. Further information on ESIG can be found on esig.energy website. Next, I would like to go over a few logistical matters before we get started. First of all, the phones will be muted for the duration of the webinar to avoid any unnecessary distraction. For the Q&A, we use Slido platform at slido.com. You need to open a browser window, go to slido.com and enter ESIG4 as event code. So that's ESIG code, and I believe you're seeing it currently on your screen. The instructions are also at the bottom of your screen, and you can use thumbs up to vote your favorite questions up, and this way we minimize number of questions and address the most important ones first. We plan to save about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end and wrap it up at the top of the hour, and then the email with link will be provided once the video file has been posted. We'll also plan to provide short answers to all unanswered questions offline. It will be posted on our website. With that, our webinar today is on operational experience with battery energy storage in ERCOT. The webinar will feature Nitika Mago, who is a manager in balancing operations planning in operations forecasting and ancillary services planning department at ERCOT. Nitika has spent last 15 years in energy industry. Her areas of focus in ERCOT include power system grid operations, grid balancing, frequency control, inverter-based resource integration, energy forecasting, ancillary services, event analysis, data analytics, and modeling. Nitika received BSc degree from University of Mumbai in 2005 and MSc degree from University of Texas in Austin in 2007. She's a registered professional engineer in Texas since 2011. Personally, it has been an honor and pleasure to have worked with Nitika during my time at ERCOT, and I'm really glad that we continue collaborating now through ESIG. In today's webinar, Nitika will provide an overview of ERCOT's experience and challenges with batteries energy storage operations. She'll share strategies, including tools, procedures, and approaches that have been and are being implemented to improve ERCOT's monitoring and modeling of battery energy storage capability. Okay, just as a short reminder, please use Slido at slido.com with event code ESIG4 to ask your questions. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Nitika, turn over to you.
All right. Hey, thank you very much for that introduction, Julia. I really appreciate it and all the background for the logistics and the introduction about myself. So I appreciate that. Now without any further ado, let's really get into the topic. You know, uh, we've set it up as to what we are looking to cover. Here's an outline. For those who are not familiar with ERCOT, I do want to start out by giving you a brief background about who ERCOT is, an overview of our current resource mix, and then really get into the topic around energy storage resources or batteries, what our current and future outlook, capacity outlook looks like, how are we modeling these in our systems today, and where we intend to go with the model, and then also talk about participation that we are seeing from ESRs in our energy and ancillary service markets, some challenges that we are facing, and some future changes that we are considering. So with that, I'll get started. So here's the first, as I mentioned, an introduction to ERCOT. We support about 90% of Texas's electric load and 75% of Texas land. We have about 52,000 plus miles of transmission lines and 570 plus generation resources within our footprint. As a company, we were put in place by the Texas legislature, and under the rules of the Texas legislature, we have four primary responsibilities primarily associated with maintaining system reliability, facilitating a competitive wholesale market, ensuring open access to transmission, and facilitating a competitive retail market. We are regulated by the Public Utility Commission of Texas with the oversight from the legislature. And so that's generally an overview about us. We are an electrical island. If you are familiar with the North American interconnections, ERCOT is an interconnection by itself, and we have 5 direct connect ties, 5 DC ties that connect us into the Eastern Interconnection in Mexico. So we are, from all practical purposes, really, we are reliant on ourselves for any reliability related issues or events that may come up. So with that setup, let's also a very quick overview of our energy market. We have today we have an energy only market with a $5,000 price cap and an operating reserve scarcity adder. Generators self-commit resources for every operating day. ERCOT may make residual reliability commitments if needed. We have a voluntary day-ahead market. Ancillary services, which is our reserves, our operational reserves, are procured and co-optimized with energy in our day-ahead market. All generators submit offers. Our real-time market clears every 5 minutes using the lowest cost offer to serve load, and every generator, including renewables, and excluding some small distributed generators, receive what we call a base point or an output level instruction from our SCED engine. From an ancillary service perspective, today we have 3 primary ancillary services. Regulation, this is the service that helps us balance energy or supply and demand every 4 seconds. Responsive reserve service, this is the service we use if there is a frequency event triggered by a low frequency event triggered by a unit trip. And non-spend reserve service, this is capacity that can be started in 30 minutes and is used to cover forecast errors or forced outages, and may also be used to replace deployed reserves. We are in the process of implementing a 4th ancillary service, ERCOT Contingency Reserve Service, ECRS. We expect to have this implemented by summer this year, and this will give us a capacity that can respond in 10 minutes. We will look to use it both to recover frequency, so following a low frequency event, bring frequency back up to 60 hertz, and to cover net load ramp that may occur, which our thermal fleet may not be able to cover. So that's at a high level what our ancillary service products look like. We do have a 2-hour duration requirement for ECRS and a 4-hour duration requirement for non-spin. With that, another set of slide again from a facts perspective, we are a summer load peaking area. Our highest peak demand is from summer last year, about 80,148 megawatts. I've also listed some of our significant records around our renewable fleet. From a penetration perspective, on April 10th, 71% of our load was being served by wind and solar resources. And you can see the other records on the slide as well. From a capacity perspective, here's just a peek into our current operational wind and solar capacities. Right now we have, or as of end of February, we have about 37,700 megawatts of wind interconnected into our grid and 15,000, just over 15,000 megawatts of solar connected into our fleet. Here's an outlook of our inertia, primarily to share with you, this particular graphic is share with you our spread in our inertia. So even though we've added a whole bunch of wind and solar, you will notice that from a spread perspective, our inertia really has not declined at the same rate, at a significantly fast rate as our renewable fleets increase. The lowest inertia we've operated at is about 115 gigawatt second. And this was from March last year. Our studies through our studies, we've established critical inertia, which is the level of inertia below which we do not plan to operate at around 100 gigawatt seconds. So we are still far away from operating at what we would consider at the danger zone from an inertia perspective. Here's another, one more outlook for you all. With all the wind and solar, I did want to share with you a perspective on how our resource capacity mix has changed over time. So there is a graphic here that is comparing what our fleet looked like in the late 90s to how our fleet looked like here in 2021. So about a couple years ago, certainly you will see a significant growth in our wind and solar in 2021. But another thing worth noticing is while we were adding wind and solar, we did lose some coal resources, but we also added into our network a lot of gas-driven combined cycle and combustion turbines. And those certainly have helped us be nimble as far as responding to net load ramps are concerned. Lastly, a picture of our net load. And this graphic is comparing how our net load profile has changed for winter season. And I'm looking at last 6 winters. Really what is very interesting to notice is in the evening hours, we've pretty much doubled our per hour net load ramp that our system has seen with the volume of solar that is being added into our grid. Now let's go on and talk about batteries. So here, this graphic here is showing you a outlook of the volume of capacity that we have interconnected today, which is roughly around 3014 megawatts. And we are projecting to add an additional 4,000 by the end of the year and several more megawatts in the following couple years. So we have a lot of megawatts of battery already connected and lots more coming. Here's a picture of our interconnection queue. This is as of end of March, so fairly recent. And really the top 3 resources in our queue are solar, batteries, and wind. The inset graphic, the table below, also in the orange box below, I'm sharing with you how the battery quantity in our queue has changed over the past several years. So we have about roughly 96,356 megawatts of batteries in the queue. Now, of course, not all of it will materialize, but that still is a significantly large number. From the perspective irrespective of duration or the capability of the batteries in our fleet, this graphic is showing you some information about our currently operational batteries and also our planned batteries, so which are in the queue right now. And essentially, what is worth noting is majority of the batteries, regardless of which bucket you look in, are short duration, which is less than 2-hour capability batteries in our fleet. Now what I want to switch over and talk with you all a little is to perspective of how we envision our systems adapting to supporting energy storage resources. And really today, as our systems are set up, we do not have a energy storage model, energy storage resource, and a model or a battery model in our systems, be it for our registration purposes or for energy and market purposes. What we do have is what we call a combo model. So we are really looking at a combination of two separate resources to represent a single battery. One of the resources is a generation resource, and another is what we call a controllable load resource. So this is essentially a load that will respond to dispatch, 5-minute dispatch instructions from our SCED. So that's how we register batteries at two separate resources, and we model them as two separate resources for the purposes of energy, market, and settlements. Here we go. The next phase we want to get into is a place where we can update our registration process such that battery owners have to register a single device. And then we would take the data that they've given and still continue to operate in a combo model world as far as energy markets and settlements are concerned. But lastly, what we want to do is get to a place where we register a single resource and we operate with a single resource. Now, there are really TBDs on both phase B and phase C, primarily because we've been chasing certain other priority items as far as system changes are concerned. But this is certainly, seeing the volume of energy storage resources, this is certainly on our, this is something we are actively working on right now as far as figuring out a roadmap. And I'll talk a little bit more about our roadmap towards the end of the deck. So I'll leave any more comments on this topic for that discussion. Now, here's just I mentioned we have two separate resources today that we use to represent an energy storage resource in our model. This slide has a graphic that just puts what the model looks like in a more pictorial format. Now, since there are two separate resources, they receive, as far as our dispatch systems, our SCED is concerned, they are two separate resources. They receive two separate base points. They receive separate ancillary service deployment instructions. So what that really does mean is we are heavily reliant on the inputs to our tools to be submitted correctly. Otherwise, there are times when the battery may receive base points or to respond on both sides of the resource, which it physically cannot do. So certainly that's a drawback of how we are operating or how we are modeling these resources right now. And it also, like I mentioned, they have two separate cost curves, and there are potential for times when if the cost curves are not set correctly, there could be conflicting base points sent to both sides of the battery. What we want to do is head into a single model system, a single model setup, wherein a battery will be seamlessly able to provide a single offer that will take it from both charging to discharging and avoid any situations where they could receive conflicting base points. They will receive a single base point essentially. So here's another view of what that single model resource would look like, and also to impress upon the fact that when we are in the state, from a telemetry perspective, the battery's telemetry will go from a negative LSL to a positive HSL, so negative low limit to a positive high limit. Uh, and it will be a very simple model as far as modeling goes. And of course, at least when this concept or this slide was being built, we do not manage state of charge for our resources. It is the responsibility of our QSCs. And so that's just another thing to keep in mind when you consider the other topics that I'll be sharing. Now let's switch and talk about some performance or some participation that we've seen from energy storage resources or from batteries. This particular graphic here is showing you the output of our entire ESR fleet during summer, during the top 5 net load days in summer. And I've included a few other pieces of information. So the blue line is the storage output. So the net output from our energy storage resource fleet. The dotted green line is showing you the state of charge of the fleet. And then the dashed gray line is showing you the clearing price from our SCED dispatch. And of course, what's worth noticing is and you see it more clearly on July 17th, we had sustained periods when the prices were fairly high and a lot of our energy storage resources were dispatched. You see a stark decline in the state of charge when that event occurred during the afternoon, during the afternoon peak periods. And you notice similar patterns, although less visible, on the other days as well, because the prices were high, but maybe not as sustained. However, the state of charge decline does show you we were certainly dispatching our fleet quite hard on the days when we had on these 5 days. Here's one more similar graphic, but now this is from winter. Specifically, we had a winter storm Elliott hit our region. The particular graphic you're seeing is from December 23rd. Same colors as the previous graphic. Here as well, you will notice there were periods where there were sustained high prices, and we were dispatching our storage fleet and depleting its state of charge tremendously, both through the morning peak and evening peak. And times when the prices were low, I've highlighted in red on the blue on the net output trace to show when the batteries were charging to replenish their state of charge. So let's move on. You've seen how the participation looks like in the energy market. Here's a perspective of what we are seeing in our ancillary service market. So the top graphic is showing you average responsibility, our average regulation obligation carried by various resource types within our fleet. The orange and purple colors correspond to combined cycle and thermal resources. And the red shade corresponds to energy storage resource. So the top graphic is showing you average average quantities carried by each resource type per quarter between 2021 and 2023. And the bottom graphic is showing you the same data, but for the ancillary service in this case is responsive reserve, specifically the PFR, the resources that provide RRS using primary frequency response capability. And what's worth noticing in almost both cases is the percentage of our ancillary services being carried by energy storage resource has increased tremendously. So it was in case of regulation, it was about 17% of our regulation up was being carried by batteries in 2021 Q1. In 2023 Q1, that number is close to 69%. So a bulk of our AAS on the regulation up service is being carried by batteries. Similarly, if you look at responsive reserve, service. Here as well, you'll notice the contribution from thermal and combined cycle fleet shrink as we move from 2021 to 2023. So we've gone from batteries only providing about 3% of our RRS PFR responsibility to providing about 68% of the capability. So that's a significant change. Ah, so, I'll make one more point before I switch over. As the fleet grows, as the fleet of energy storage resources grow, we expect that we will see further changes in these participation or further increases in these participations or in these provision of ancillary services from storage resources. Now to talk a little about challenges. Maybe I'll first focus on responsive reserve that we get from primary frequency response resources. ERCOT today has a rule which allows non-thermal resources like batteries to provide up to 100% of their capability as RRS PFR. So in order to do so, they typically end up setting their group settings for governor response to 1% or lower. Now, due to various reasons, be it incorrect logic, insufficient headroom, wrong telemetry, etc., we have seen that some energy storage resources have failed to deliver the required RRS PFR response when needed. The graphic here is showing you one example wherein you're seeing a frequency trace from a unit trip event. And the blue line represents output from a particular energy storage resource. And essentially, frequency drops and there is no movement in the output from this resource. Now, like I mentioned here, even in the previous graphic, non-thermal resources like storage and certain data center loads are already carrying up to 73% of ERCOT's total RRS PFR requirement. As more such resources become operational, we expect that that contribution will grow. Now, there is a big because of the 1% rule that we have, or where we allow 100% of our resources capability to be provided as RRS PFR, there is a concern that the inherent diversity in the fleet of resources providing RRS PFR may diminish over time, and potentially too much RRS PFR may be carried by a single resource. Now, the issue with this sort of a setup is really that there could be operating conditions wherein failure to provide response during an event may result in ERCOT violating its NERC standards, or the balancing standards that NERC has established. As a result, since late 2021, ERCOT has commissioned a study to investigate whether there are reliability reasons to establish one or more types of limits on the resources providing RRS PFR. It could be a resource level limit, it could be a group level limit, it could be a system level limit for technologies. We had kept the options, or at least the options for mitigating the risk, if there was one, open for this study. Recommendations of the study are actually to be discussed within a couple days within our stakeholder body. So I did drop in a link to the workshop if you all are interested in understanding what studies we're conducting and what we are recommending. Please do feel free to browse through the link. So that's one of the challenges we are seeing. Another challenge that we have seen here in the recent past is insufficient amount of state of charge being preserved for the amount of RPS being carried. So essentially back to the same thought, as more and more batteries carry our ancillary services, our ancillary services, we want to make sure that these resources preserve a sufficient amount of capability or sufficient amount of charge so that if those ancillary services were to be deployed, these resources can respond to the entire deployment. But what we have noticed certainly that there have been periods where the actual state of charge of the resources that are carrying AS does not meet our expected state of charge. Um, and so, since mid to late 2022, essentially last year, we have started actively working on identifying changes that we can make within our systems, be it the EMS, the energy management system, or the market management system, to model state of charge from energy storage resources in our tools and studies. Primarily, we are focusing on our reliability unit commitment studies to ensure that those studies have a good accounting of how much state of charge we can expect from batteries. And when we are looking at this issue, we down in our pipeline of things of changes to come, we are looking to implement a real-time co-optimization market setup a few years from now. So when we are working on figuring out how to model state of charge resources of batteries in our tools, we are certainly looking at both our today's, how we are set up today, and how we may be set up post RTC to identify changes that will be needed. And then let's see. So, and one last thing, with the way that our footprint has seen a growth in energy storage resources, there is an increasing need to better account ESR capability within our near-term studies and resource adequacy assessment. To this end, to really help us with that sort of a goal, we have also put together an initiative where we are building a state of charge forecast, a very granular 5-minute level forecast, and even an hourly forecast using machine learning models. And so the graphic here is showing you an example of what the various models that we built, how they performed in predicting state of charge of our batteries a couple days ago. This is from April 3rd in comparison to how actual state of charge played out. So this is a really a new initiative for us. We are still working on tuning the models, getting them into a better or to better perform. But something like this is results from this effort. We do expect to start plugging into our assessment so that the control room has a better idea of how much capability they can count on during the peak hours from energy storage resources. So I think that covers quite a bit of the topics I wanted to get into. I did mention I will share some thoughts around a roadmap for energy storage, and this particular graphic is actually something we put together a while back. What it was looking to do was trying to take us from where we are today, what changes we can make so that we can continue to operate till we implement a real-time co-optimization and a single model solution within our systems. And of course, there might be some more changes we may need to make after we are in that setup. So there is a TBD. So today I don't have a clear line of sight on when we will have RTC implemented. We are actively working on planning for that right now. But one additional thing we are looking to do while we are in this phase is we are looking to see what sort of changes we can make to better model state of charge in that RTC setup. So hopefully, if you follow ERCOT, we should have some more insights around what our overall roadmap with true date looks like. But this is essentially just a preview of that particular roadmap for now. So with that, some key takeaways. To just summarize the contents that you all have seen today. So ERCOT is an islanded electrical grid with a high penetration of utility scale wind and solar resources. We have about 3,000 megawatts of short duration, mostly transmission connected ESRs in our footprint. And we are seeing a similar makeup of short duration resources in our interconnection queue as well. Currently, operational ESRs are actively participating in our energy and ancillary service markets. ESRs are providing nearly 68% of our regulation up and responsive reserve, hourly regulation up and responsive reserve requirements. ERCOT has been actively monitoring performance of ESRs during events. ERCOT has seen performance issues in some cases, and we are working with equipment operators to fix issues. Now, lack of performance may increase reliability risk, and hence, where appropriate, ERCOT is also working on identifying systemic ways to mitigate the risk. Lastly, our setup, lastly, just to recap, today our EMS and MMS do not model ESRs. A combination of generation and load resource are being used as a substitute. Also, ERCOT's current studies do not model state of charge for ESRs. As the fleet of ESRs grows, it is becoming increasingly important for ERCOT to improve the modeling and accounting of ESRs in our systems and studies. So to that end, ERCOT is right now actively working on identifying improvements, both that can apply to our current systems and the future systems that we are looking to head into. So with that, I'll pause. This is really my last slide. Julia, happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Right, thanks so much, Nitika. Very good information. There are tons of questions here. Some of the questions were on inertia monitoring, setting up critical inertia, bit of details of frequency control. I just wanted to say that maybe around 4 years ago, we had a webinar on the topic that covers some of these things in details, and Ryan will put the link to that in the chat. So I might skip those questions for now and get more to the storage related questions. And if we have time, then we can come back to that too. But one of the questions was the most popular one by far is still on inertia. So I'll ask that. Is ERCOT planning to create a market for inertia, which could be a product that batteries can potentially provide?
So as of now, I mean, like I mentioned, we do not have an inertia problem per se. We do recognize that a market-based solution could help, but that's pretty much a very long-term sort of an option as far as mitigating inertia is concerned. So far, we have other mechanisms to help us widen our operating range, and we are focusing on those first.
Thank you, Nitika. The next question is, does ERCOT count on DR less than 10 megawatt battery storage? And do you have visibility of that?
Yeah, so there are the only really distribution connected batteries or ESRs that we have visibility into are the ones that are participating in our ancillary service market. So out of that 3,000 installed capacity number that I quoted, about 10% of that is from distribution level resources. There are certain specific requirements in our protocols around what we expect these distribution resources to be set up as to be able to qualify to provide AS. And so that's a very small fleet that is certainly in our mix of resources participating in our ancillary services. And that's the fleet that we have visibility into.
All right, thank you. The next question is, I think you answered it, but maybe you can reiterate. Are there any plans for ERCOT to eventually model / manage storage state of charge to further ensure reliability of dispatch schedules?
So our plans are around modeling state of charge. We don't intend to manage it. So we don't intend to give instructions around where state of charge needs to be. But we are certainly looking to model them so our studies are better aware of how much capability they can actually count on from energy storage resource as the day progresses.
Thank you. The next one is a good one, and I think there were several questions along the same lines. Are the batteries not penalized for failing to provide RS-VFR?
There are some compliance requirements around primary frequency response, but they are all after the fact. Compliance measures really when preparing to operate the grid, we are looking to ensure that it is set up such that if we have that significant event, a significant amount of supply resources strip, we should be able to come out of it without entering into a violation. So that's the more significant concern when I talk about lack of response. Certainly, from our compliance perspective, there is both a regional standard and ERCOT requirements around ensuring that there is that if there isn't consistent performance, there are compliance violations.
This question came later, but kind of related to the previous one, so I'll ask it here because you mentioned you setting up monitoring for state of charge. And there was a question if storage can send SCADA information about the state of charge that you can use for that monitoring.
So in real time, that is what we use today. There are 3 telemetry points that we receive from our batteries, which tells us what the current state of charge of the battery is, what is the max limit at which they will operate, and what's the min limit they'll operate. So that's what we use today, at least in real time, to maintain situational awareness. And ensure that sufficient state of charge is being preserved. In order to do what we are thinking as far as our look ahead studies goes, so if when our reliability unit commitment tool runs, it is looking at the next 24-hour horizon. It may be able to use current telemetry, but it still may need more information from our fleet operators to understand how they intend to operate the battery and what state of charge they intend to maintain during the following hours within the day. So that's what we are trying to think through right now in terms of what information we could use and how it could, what may be the best way to provide it given how we want to use that information.
Thank you. The next question, I believe you also alluded to that in the presentation, but still it's good to reiterate. Is there any reason why battery storage cannot provide 100% of ancillary services in ERCOT as more storage is deployed, or are there any limitations there?
Well, there are caveats to that statement, right? I mean, there are not hard limitations in our rule set today. Around what minimum amount of AS we may procure from storage, but then that comes with risks around if there is an event, if there isn't sufficient amount of state of charge being preserved for the obligation being carried, will we be able to ride through the event? So, and if there is a deep event or if there is an event, will these resources perform and provide the response we expect from them? If designed correctly, if they operate correctly, if they have the sufficient capabilities, then the operating risks that we operate under certainly starts changing, right? And that with those caveats, certainly there is no reason why not our entire AS couldn't come from batteries. But it is subject to all of the performance criteria being met. And today, as far as we are concerned, we are still, this is still a new technology. Our tools are not developed to handle and monitor the technology appropriately. So certainly we are more concerned and cautious about how our resources that are providing our AS are evolving, and we are observing and learning as we go.
Right. The next question is, could you briefly cover what frequency response settings do batteries typically use?
So most of the battery fleet that we have today is required to provide primary frequency response. Our frequency deadband is 17 millihertz. And our droop settings, like I mentioned, can be as low as 1%, so that when our frequency drops to 59.4 hertz, we expect full response from the resources. And that's generally the setting that pretty much most of our storage fleet is operating to. They are also able to qualify for and provide a ERCOT specific fast frequency response service. Uh, if they choose to operate in that sort of a mode, the trigger setting for that frequency for that capability is 59.85 hertz, and the response time is 250 milliseconds.
Nitika, using the opportunity, and since you mentioned that, how much participation do you see of batteries in FFR? That's my personal question, so I'm jumping the queue.
No, really, we've not seen a whole lot of participation in real time in FFR so far. There are some market-related challenges that the resources are experiencing. So there are a few more system changes that may be needed as far as how our market is designed around FFR before we see any change. But we do have quite a bit of resources qualified. It is just nobody is providing that service right now.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, how do short duration batteries participate in the day-ahead market without getting operating instructions that produce infeasible state of charge?
Yeah, today the onus, so our day-ahead market awards are binding at QSC level. So really,
You might want to clarify what QSC is.
Sorry, for the operators of our batteries. So really, the burden of ensuring that the awarded ancillary services are delivered is on the QSC or is on the operator of the resource. And if they need to be more cautious in how they offer in order to ensure that the awards are not infeasible, then our expectation is that they will be taking those actions right now. In the long run or in the near term, we may consider further system changes. It is just one of the things that we are having to balance right now is what volume of changes do we want to deliver and get so that they have a good impact till our real-time co-optimization systems are here, because at that point our entire setup around how we run the market will change. So we are certainly having to prioritize what changes we implement for the near term.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. The next question is, what justification led to a decision to delegate state of charge management to batteries, I presume?
So I do, okay, now this will be hearsay, but as far as I know, when we were thinking about setting this up, we did have quite a bit of conversation with other entities who were probably in a similar boat or looking to get in a similar boat with managing ESRs. And generally in our market, our setup always has been that we rely on the operators to manage their fleet, and we were at that point comfortable with that sort of an approach. Today as well, we are somewhat in that same boat. However, we do see a need to model the state of charge and make sure that our tools are better aware. But I don't think we are looking to get into the setup where we will manage state of charge for batteries.
Thank you. The next one is, what is the breakdown of battery revenue between energy arbitrage versus ancillary services versus other services in ERCOT today, I guess?
I'm not the right person to answer that question. I apologize. Certainly, we have seen times where our ancillary services have been priced really high. We've also and there have been times when our energy market has been priced really the outcome of the energy market has been priced really high, and we have seen batteries very actively transition from operating on a normal day with carrying lots of ancillary services to switching to carrying less ancillary services and participating in energy markets on days when they expect the outcomes to be tight, the net loads to be high, and our ramping capability to be short.
The next question is, I'm kind of picking more questions that are related to batteries and to the topic of the, what is the length of optimization window that you use, and have you had situations where batteries were being dispatched on, but that energy would be needed later?
So our optimization window in the day ahead market is a 24-hour window. So DAM clears for the next 24 for the entire operating day. We don't have any co-optimization in our real time. So we are an energy only market from that perspective. We have, as far as the next question goes, which was around, have we seen cases where batteries are being dispatched first? I wouldn't be surprised if in our RUC engine that's happening right now, but we are not. We are probably not very aware of it, just because we are not. These resources are being treated like any other supply resource in our tools today.
One question, kind of jumping the queue a little bit, but I think it's relevant to what you talked about before. With ERCOT not doing active state of charge management, what is the mechanism for monitoring and mitigating insufficient state of charge for RRS?
Today,
like insufficiency of RRS overall.
Today, it's purely monitored in real time through telemetry. We do have calculations running in our tools which let the control room know what is the expected state of charge on any resource that is carrying RRS, and it also tends to highlight times when the resource has been consistently short in meeting that expectation. So really, it's purely monitoring, and it's happening in real time based off of current information.
For the batteries on your system and in the queue, what is the percentage that are charged by solar versus wind versus others of standalone? Do you keep track of that information?
I do think we keep track of that. Bulk of our capacity is from standalone batteries. We do have a handful of or a set of co-located batteries with other renewable resources, but really the bigger batteries that we have are all standalone, transmission connected.
That's right. You don't keep track of it, and most of it is the co-located ones, primarily with solar.
Yeah.
So far. How are battery storage systems modeled in trans-instability studies? Which type of control is used? Droop, virtual, synchronous machines, etc.
I will have to take that answer to get back to you. I know we built some generic models for the studies we are doing, but I may need help from a dynamic model specialist in answering this one.
Yeah, we can take this one offline. We'll send you unanswered questions for short responses offline, if that's okay.
Yep.
Right. I think I'll pick one. No, actually, another one about batteries. To provide regulation reserve, is battery dispatched every 5 minutes? On average, how many charge cycles per day battery is operated at, and what impact does it have on lifespan of a battery?
So our real-time market sends a base point instruction or where it wants the battery to operate at in the next 5 minutes. So that base point instruction is sent every 5 minutes. Regulation deployment occur on a 4-second basis, and they may dispatch the battery up or down based off of where frequency is at that given point of time. For conventional regulation, we really don't have any controls around charge discharge cycles. It's really up to the operators. They have the ability, if the battery is getting depleted because of regulation up deployments, they have the ability in real time to move the responsibility or the obligation for ancillary service to another resource that has the capability to provide the service. Generally, from an exhaustion perspective or from regulation usage perspective, our overall exhaustion metrics tend to stay below 5%. So essentially what that means is 5% of the time within any month, we would deploy regulation fully. So that might give you an idea around how often can you expect a battery to be hit hard for a regulation deployment.
Right. Thanks, Nitika. I think in the interest of time, we'll wrap up. As I mentioned, there were some of inertia questions. We had a webinar on that. I believe those questions may be answered there. And Ryan posted a link in the chat. Also, all the unanswered questions, Nitika will provide short response and we'll post together with the rest of the materials. Slides will be posted and then the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel as well. So with that, I would like to wrap up. And Nitika, thank you so much for really excellent and interesting presentation. I've learned a few things about ERCOT that I didn't know. It's really interesting, groundbreaking work you're doing. So I'm looking forward to see those changes that you're working on be implemented. We appreciate the engagement of everybody on the call, and if you would like to stay engaged, I would invite you to participate in the next ESIG webinar on April 19th on stability enhancement of utility scale renewable energy plants in weak grids, by Baruz Barani, who is a senior lecturer and director of Grid Innovation Hub at Monash University in Australia. Further information on all ESIG webinars can be found on our website at esig.energy under events. And you are all invited to attend. Information on all G-PST webinars can also be found on globalpst.org. I would like to thank you again, Nitika, for this timely webinar, and thank you all for your interest and for your questions, and we look forward to seeing you again. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and thanks again for your participation. Bye now.